Hello and welcome to In Focus. I'm your host, Yesenia Taveras. Norman Storm Oliver grew up on the rough and tough streets of Wilmington's Southbridge neighborhood. A graduate of Newark High School and Delaware State University, he shifted from basketball and football to politics and entrepreneurship. He joins us now to share with us his journey from being a kid in Southbridge to the successful businessman and classic man and the community activist that he is today. Welcome to the show, Norman.
How you doing? Thank you for having me.
Yes, there's so many layers to you.
Community activist, football, basketball.
Everything from sports to even a former politician, a former council member here, Wilmington, Delaware. Welcome to In Focus.
Thank you. And I had a lot of hair then. You know, I had an afro.
It's okay. The look you have now is actually in. It's been in for a long time.
Oh, cool. Okay. I appreciate it coming from you. Well, won't you give me your hair then?
I know, right? That's a lot of people say. Just donate it. There's a lot of people in need, right?
Phew, you're looking at me.
So let's get into Norman Oliver, the young kid who's from Wilmington, Delaware. Take us back to that time in your life.
Like you said, grew up in Southbridge. My mother pretty much raised us. All of my brothers and sisters were a tight-knit family. And I think if you really look back on most families, big families like us, it was a village. Like I think somebody said it took a village to raise a child. So my grandmothers, my aunts, my uncles, grandfathers, they were really involved with our life. And I think that's why my family, my sisters and brothers are real close. And Southbridge was a family back then also. So you had people in the community to help raise you also, because I think you had to do that.
I was going to say, in the times that you were growing up, was it really like a village in Southbridge? Because we know what Southbridge is today, but take us back to that era.
Well, you know, you could just open your next door neighbor's door and go grab something to eat, which we did a lot of times, because, you know, it was always about sharing. And I think that when you read some of the things that you were talking about me, it's because of those learnings. Learn how to share, learn how to give back. And I think it came easy because we had to. You know, it wasn't by design, it's by choice, and you had to.
And Norman, what were some of the challenges you faced being raised by a single mother and 4 brothers and 4 sisters?
Hunger. Get off the bed. Like, turn the TV. You know, remember you used to only had like 3, 6, and 10. You only had 3 channels back then.
That's right.
So, I mean, but even then, you know, that's one of those things when you were poor, didn't realize you were poor because there was so much love and people gave us so much, you know. Like I look at my house now, the number of bathrooms we have compared to ours, we have 1, you know, but you never felt that. You never felt that because we were all tight, we were all given, and it's like we could stay over our aunts, uncles, grandparents' house, so it wasn't like we always stayed there. It was always extended families.
And that's definitely something that we need to bring back in our communities today.
Yeah, and you know, and Paul and I, we were talking earlier just about people in the community who you looked up to. Right. You know, it was always role models. You know, actually, I don't know where we're jumping at, even starting the Stormers Classic Basketball League. There was a guy in our community who used to run a basketball league in the community, Chauncey Ryder, and Specs and those guys right in Albert Park. And it's ironic, now they call it Norman Oliver Park. You know, but it's weird the way things go around in circles.
It is. And before we get into that, there is an interesting fact that I didn't know about when I was doing my research on you about you and your family and your siblings almost facing homelessness when you were an 8th grader. Take us back. What was going on here?
Well, that was interesting, right? That was an interesting time. Me and my brother Alonzo, he was in the 7th and I was in the 8th. We come home in our furniture and clothes on the lawn. Who gets kicked out of a project house, right? But us, you know what I mean? But what was interesting about it, we were in a rental home in South Wilmington, and a house wasn't available for us. So a community activist actually got my mother a key to a house in Southbridge Projects, and basically said, just move in. So we just moved in, and then at the top, then the lady who was supposed to have the house, basically like, this is my house, you know. And so it was big articles then, but back then they had a morning news and an evening news. So Bill Frank was writing about this. And a lot of people was involved. Even Ted Blunt, I don't know if you read through the whole article. I think he was on the Wilmington Housing Authority board. He might have been the president. So, I mean, it was interesting time. And then we had to stay at the Delaware Motel for a little while, I guess a couple of weeks. Then they put us in like an emergency house, and then we ended up getting another house in the projects. But that was interesting. I talk about it every once in a while, you know, when it's a need to. It's a learning experience. Makes you humble, makes you hungry, and I think that I follow that example, you know, because who wants to go back to that? You know, people
Right.
say, "Man, don't forget where you come from." You want to forget some of that stuff, right?
Yes.
I think it makes you stronger, more aware, more conscious because you see people going through stuff like that.
That's right.
So if I can break through some of that stuff, I think that anybody can.
That's right. And you were a young 8th grader at the time. There's actually kids right now who are dealing with homelessness and going from shelter to school and things of that nature. What could you share with anyone in that experience at such a young age on how you managed your emotions? And
Yeah, that's a very good question, by the way. And I think I started out by saying the village. You know, we still had a support group, and we didn't have to because we could have moved in with my grandmother, my aunts, my uncles. But my mother chose to keep us together. So like I said, we stayed at the hotel for a couple of weeks before we moved into another bungalow. But I think what I would say to somebody is don't be embarrassed. Keep fighting. You know, and I had the opportunity because, like you said, I travel around the world.
Right.
I've been to Gambia, South Africa. And you know, I remember going to Johannesburg, and I went to Soweto and Pretoria, around those areas. And I remember an African-American woman sweeping the dirt. I was like, wow, she took so much pride in keeping the dirt in front of her house clean. And they lived in like a little box, and it must have been like 6, 7, 8 people. It's like, but they took pride in it, you know. So I think that the one thing you do is take pride in anything you do and work hard. I mean, like, the grind is real, you know.
It
is.
is.
You know, I don't think anything comes that easy, especially if you come in out of those surroundings or those areas.
Right.
Sometimes it's more difficult, but I'm not the only one who won't be the first or the last, you know what I mean?
That's right.
So I think that I take that approach.
Okay. And you actually grew up here in Wilmington, went to school here, and then you transferred out to Newark High School. What happened there during the transferring, and what did you benefit from going to Newark High School?
You know, again, you know what's interesting about that? I got an award 2 weeks ago, me and B.B. Coker from Delaware State Early Childhood Learning. And what I remember vividly is I went to Wilmington High, which was predominantly black, 90%, and 10% white, if that. Then we got busted to Newark High, which was 90% white. So a lot of my friends didn't make it through that transition because when we got busted, you know, you were getting called the N-word, eggs being thrown at the bus, parents moving out. Then there was a teacher strike. It was a crazy, crazy time. You walk into the bathrooms and you read that. And I was part of the peer council with B.B. Coker. Actually started an African-American group, and I was the president of that. So that time was really, really interesting.
I was going to say, was this the fresh of the beginning of desegregation and
Oh, yeah.
schools?
Oh, that was the first year. That was the first year.
Wow.
We were the first class. And so I got involved with peer council, and then I got involved with play production and acting. And like I said, I played a little football, but not much. A little basketball, but not much. But I flourished in that surrounding when a lot of my friends didn't. So.
And how did you do that, being a minority during desegregation and being able to still be successful in that environment,
You know,
thriving?
a guy, he was a psychologist, a white guy, Lee Stanton, took me under his wings. And he saw something to me probably that I did not see in myself. And he put me on a pedestal. He put me in the leadership position. And then Miss Hudson, I started writing poems like my junior year, because that was the junior year.
Okay.
And I wasn't a great student at Wilmington High. And I did start changing at Newark. And like, even my senior year, when everybody was taking like 12 hours and going home, I must have taken 24 hours and doing extra work to graduate. And then a guy from Delaware State, Jethro Williams, he's passed, may God bless him, he took a chance on me to go to Delaware State, get to Delaware State, and became freshman class president, student government president, president of my fraternity, and the story's written.
Let's get to that, because it's so interesting to hear you talk about it, going to an environment that you've never been exposed to at Newark High School. And then one would think, because you are a minority, maybe we could thrive in being in sports and staying with basketball and football, but you went the other route, academic-wise, educational-wise, leadership-wise, just really embracing excellence.
Yeah.
And then you took that experience with you to Delaware State University, holding all these positions.
Yeah.
You even got involved with Student Government Association
I was
as
president.
well?
I was
You
the
were
president.
the president.
Yeah.
So take us to that time in your life, because There's so many things that as college, a young college student can go through.
Yeah.
Going to college, not really even knowing what they want to do, but you went in very focused and taking those leadership roles. Outside of that, I believe you were like 19 years old when you started Storm and Norman basketball.
I think
how did you do all this?
I think focus is a stretch.
A balance.
Hey, by the way, I had a plan, right? I said I'm going to be in here for like a semester. They're going to kick me out. I'm going to service. So that was my focus. But like I told you, I actually, and I will say this, and I never thought of this, I think more African Americans, especially students, rather than getting into sports, should look at play production and acting and stuff. Because I was shy. It really helped me out of that shyness. Okay. And I think that more people need to do that. So at Delaware State, I was in acting a little bit too. Okay. And again, my brother said I started writing poems, and a couple older guys at Delaware State took me under their wing and asked me if I would be interested in running for freshman class president. They said, "You'll win, man, say a poem." And I was like, okay. I said
your poetry took you to that level?
Yeah.
Wow.
And I said a poem and I won, right? I mean, they blew away. Where do we go from here? That was a poem, right? And so I win, I go into the first meeting. I said, so this is what we're going to do. We're going to have toga parties. We're going to go to Howard. We're going to go to Cheney, Lincoln. They said, no, this is not what we're going to do. You got to vote on this. I said, okay, vote. They said, no, parliamentary procedures. I said, what is that? I was the president. I had no clue. So I had to buy a book on parliamentary procedures. And
wow.
I had a great career. My next year, I pledged the fraternity, got Alpha Psi. The following year, I was the president of Men's Council. Then my next year, I was the president of student government, which is the highest honor. And I got the highest honor of student leadership. And
okay.
I never thought that I would do that, but so
okay.
that was. And during that whole time, I was doing the turkey drive coming home, and the whole time I was running Stormers Classic coming home.
Yeah, talk to us about that, because you were still a young college student.
Yeah.
And you dived into serving your community at such a young age, and you weren't even up here in Wilmington. You were down in Dover, Delaware, and you would go to college and you would commute back and forth, making sure.
Well, actually, during the summer, we were home.
Okay.
So I would run the Classic during the summer months.
But were you like pre-planning and all that prior to?
Well, we would have the money come out of our pockets. You know, it was like a league that we started, and we had like old trophies we screw in, get them cleaned up, and give them to the guys who played in the league. Right. And like my sister, you know, she's a city council person now. She's down Del State with me, and my other brother Alonzo was down Del State with me, and my brother Rob had just graduated. So we had a little mechanism. We had a blueprint to follow.
Okay. And so what drew you from the time you graduated from Delaware State University, getting involved with Storm and Norman Classics and all the things that you've been doing at such a young age, to looking into the political realm?
Well, so my senior year, I was the president of student government, and we started something called the African American Leaders in Delaware. And I started at Del State with me and Dr. Lenore Hudson Williams, who was my advisor.
Okay.
And one of the first recipients was Jim Baker, because I think he had just been elected president of city council, or he had been on city council for a few years. So Jim Baker came, and Dan Farley was the mayor. And after I gave him the award, I told Dan Farley I would be graduating soon. Would he give me a job? And like a typical politician, he's like, yeah. And so, as fate would have it, his wife worked on a Bancroft, and I was outside talking to the guy, Lee Stanton, I was telling you about, and Dan Farley was going to visit his wife. And I said, do you remember me? He said, yeah, probably another lie. That's why I need a job. And Dan Farley gave me an internship in his office, and he was the mayor. And God, that was a beautiful time. And so he talked me into running for city council, and I ran for city council, and I was city councilman for 12 years, chairman of the Democratic Party. And
so Farley taking you underneath his wing, being exposed to the political world, then enticed you to run, which you ran and won, and you served from 1992 to 2003.
2005, I think.
2005?
Yeah, you probably know better than me.
So I came in 07.
Okay.
So take us back to that time as a politician. What were some of the things when you came in to Wilmington City Council that you knew right away that you needed to address or help here in the city?
Well, that's a good question, because it was old school politics then. You had Leo Marshall around, you had Al Plant, Ted Blunt, Ortega, Stephanie Bolden. One thing, even Bill Freeborn, who was a Republican, one thing I will say, and this is not a knock to anybody, I don't want anybody to take it the wrong way, I think that we disagreed, but afterwards we would go across the street and get something to eat, have a drink, and talk about politics, talk about the city. How can we grow the city?
Okay.
Because you're going to disagree, right?
Mm-hmm.
But I think it was mature and, okay, I disagree on this and that. And Jim Seals had just got elected. So he was the first African-American mayor, so you had that dynamic going on. And I was a young freshman politician. I remember Jim Baker and Jim Seals would go at it sometimes. And I remember, because Jim Baker watched me grow up and Jim Seals was my fraternity brother, I remember going having conversations with those guys.
Okay.
About, wow, can we, like Rodney King, can we all get along?
Right, because you have to agree to disagree,
Yeah,
but having that open discussion, being transparent.
I think we got a lot accomplished.
Mm-hmm.
And I didn't agree with everything Jim Seals or Jim Baker or Leo Marshall said. But I think at the end of the day, we would go to Leo's parties and we would go to the mayor's parties, and I would go over to Loretta Walsh's house,
Right.
But I think that we was doing, and I didn't vote for everything,
Mm-hmm.
I didn't, but I thought that everybody was respectful.
Mm-hmm. And Norman, you've, I believe, been bit by the entrepreneurship bug very early on. But during your political time when you were a politician, there was that commotion on the streets of, is he going to remain being a politician, or is he going to pursue his business ventures that he wants to do?
Well, that was Jim Baker's quote.
I didn't want to throw it in out there, but we all know Jim.
That was his quote. Well, it's funny, because even when I first got out, I had a store. I had a corner store in Delhi. And I was doing consultant work. And they was writing about me every day in the paper. I had no idea what the hell they was talking about. They called me the architect of suburban street funds. I was like, I still to today don't even know how that works, but that's a story for another time, right? Gee, my life, right?
Yeah.
Oh, God.
How did you deal with all that?
Well, first of all, I knew it was a lie, right? And I think I had a beef with one of the reporters,
Okay.
And back then, because they had reporters who would cover you all the time, why mess with a guy with the pen?
Right, yeah,
And so
that's what they say.
He had the pen, and he was going in, man. God, I couldn't even open the office over Southbridge. I was like, is this the Taj Mahal? It was just so ridiculous. I was like, I opened the office in Southbridge. Oh, you use don't remember bad people. Okay. Oh, Al Plant, Suburban Street. I'm like, I can't catch a break from these guys. So, but in all sincerity, I think entrepreneurship is a beautiful thing.
Mm-hmm.
I have a transportation company that does very well.
Okay.
I have a construction company that does pretty well. I have a consultant company that does pretty well.
Okay.
So I've been blessed to work really hard, do some good things.
And so talk to us about your journey, though, as the entrepreneur, because you have Noor Enterprises, you have Our Youth Inc. When you started this, take us back to that time. What was the need, the initiative in our community?
Well, first of all, when I started Noor Enterprises, I knew that academically in Southbridge, 7 out of 10 young men were failing. And that was horrible. And I knew that some of the kids weren't getting not necessarily the proper education, but not the proper nutrition. Mm-hmm. So I started a food, breakfast program right there.
Okay.
So some of the kids would come in early in the morning, get a nice breakfast. We would have sleepovers. We had Mr. Herman Moffitt, who was a tutor. Ben Carson's son. Ben Carson, the housing director, his son was a volunteer tutor at my office from University of Delaware. So we had University of Delaware students come down. We had a couple churches involved. So it was a very good program.
And now, when I think of you, I think of the Norman who's always been, I don't want to use the term hustling, but you've always been on that
that's
path.
okay.
Yeah, it's
That's
okay. You've always been hustling at such a young age. Was there an experience that you went through, maybe being a sibling of 9, or was there something in your community that you knew you didn't want to be a product of? You didn't want to get involved with the drugs and all the things that could have been infiltrating Southbridge area. Is that what made you kind of just focus on so many different entrepreneur ventures? I
think you just have it or you don't. I guarantee you, if you ask Bill Gates or Warren Buffett or Puffy Combs or Jay-Z,
it's either in your DNA or
it just happened. You figure these guys start out rappers, right? Now they're producers. They do TV shows. They do movies. They promoting Ciroc so then it's a real portfolio. So I think that that's what happens with me. It's just become a portfolio. But one thing I will say, I think that's really important, again, for me and my family, we just always like giving back. That's why with the turkey drive, Storm's Classic, it's all volunteers. Never been like, how much can I make from it? How can it benefit me? It's more like, how can it benefit the community?
And you've also mentioned people that likes like Alplan and so on about being mentors in your life. Have you, or are you still continuing to be mentors in other young minority men's lives?
Yeah, and again, like the conversation Paul and I just had, I think that it is kind of weird sometimes, right? I should be able to write for 10 young guys' names, that come in my office, but it's more or less like my nephews, my cousins. Some guys who played in the classics is always like, it was on the Facebook page, LaDae Johnson put on there other day thanking me for helping him. I introduced LaRon Prophet last week at an event. LaRon Prophet went on to play at Maryland and Los Angeles Lakers, and he was like, Norm, you had such an impact on me that you don't realize you would take me to meetings. I wish there were more young guys in the community would knock on my door and say this. By the way, I probably give out $20,000 in scholarship money for kids going to college.
Oh, wonderful. Yeah,
Delaware State, University of Delaware, mostly HBCUs, but I give out money for UD too.
And how important is it? I'm obviously it's important, but for your perspective, to being the change.
Oh, it's very important. It's very important. I don't think it's where you start; it's where you finish. I think I'm still somebody's cliche, but who cares? But it's true, right? Like you and I were talking about, you've been doing this for 18 years. You're like, where did time go, right?
Right.
But you don't know who you're impacting on this other side of the TV.
That's true.
And you started at a young age in high school.
That's right. And you always got to come back and bring other people up. And so now the Stormin' Norman that everyone knows, he has this turkey drive that he's been doing for 37 years. How did you start that? What was the need for that, and where have you taken it to today?
And I think, again, I harper back on family and us. I came home after my freshman year. That winter, my mother cooked some dinners, of course, cooking for us, and she was so generous, right? Asked if I could take about 4 meals and feed people down at the homeless shelter, and she gave them to me. The second year, I did the same thing. And then the next 2 years, we fed families wow, this is pretty cool. Man, you guys are prepared for me, right?
Definitely.
So we fed people actual dinners at Henrietta Johnson Medical Center. Okay. And then Paul Tigani, who worked at Standard Distributors, donated like 20 turkeys. And that following year, Judge Farnan and the Farnan family said, why don't you feed people in the high-rise? I'm going to donate 100 turkeys. I was like, whoa. And that's what we did. We fed 100 people in the high-rise. It's just Compton and Hurley here in Windsor. And this year, we're going to feed 6,000 up and down the state.
6,000 this year.
So we went from 4 people underneath a bridge to 6,000. All the high-rises in Wilmington. All the Boys and Girls Clubs up and down the state.
Yeah, that's what we see here.
And Seaford, Georgia. Yeah, that's Seaford, Delaware, I think.
So is that where you start now in Seaford, and then you follow your way up?
We start here.
And then go down.
Because the seniors are, first couple of years we started down there.
Okay, because I remember there was a time where.
Yeah, but it was bad timing because you get down there and nobody's there, right? Because the students are in school. Okay. Who would usually come by the Boys and Girls Club. So we start here when the seniors are just getting up. We finish at Crest Freeway at 12. Then, man, what's cool is we get a police escort up and down the state. Wilmington police, then the county police picks us up, then the state police. Then we come back to county police. And they were at the meeting too on Tuesday when we were talking about. And I think that's really, and I said that we probably, a lot of times police get a bad rap. I said, man, we got to clap for these guys, for doing some good like that. So I commend the city of Wilmington, Newcastle County, and the state.
Oh, this was the meeting here?
Yeah. Oh, wow. Yep, that's the meeting. Yeah, see.
And how important is for, like you said, it takes a village, everyone to come to the table and be a part of this?
Yeah. There's city police. Yeah, look how it started. Look how many people are there now. It started like me. Then we got 3 people. I remember Belinda Bruce, who used to write for the News Journal, so I can't always beat up the News Journal like I wish I could. But Belinda donated money so we could get some turkeys and trimmers for families. Mike McCabe. It's been an incredible journey.
That's right. And you
see the mayor? The mayor was there. He came and spoke. I hope that he wins the Turkey Drive
Sussex County.
trophy. I told him he has to beat Matt Myers up. I mean, look, Duffy Samuels, Pastor
Mm-hmm.
D. I mean, look at the diversity in the room. I mean,
I see.
color has no bearing.
That's right.
Superintendents and people from different fraternities, sororities, Boys and Girls Club, Girl Scouts, entrepreneurs, police officers, city council members. I mean, it's everyone.
And the great thing that I like, even though these are key leaders in our community, you also have hundreds of volunteers that come together throughout the entire state.
And how about the students? I mean, and let me give a plug up for Michelle Finance. Without Michelle Finance, God, she's God's sent. I have no idea where would be. Lisa Lynch, I mean, again, like, I want to keep blowing my sister up, Xanthia. You know, she helps out tremendously. Hanifa Shabazz. I mean, these people have been helping me out for years, and I appreciate them. And the people that I didn't name, I hope you know you're my heart. I just don't have the time to name 300 people.
Mm-hmm.
Charlotte Barnes, I mean, for her church gives all the time. You know, I mean, like the mayor, the county executive, Chris Coons would be there, the governor. I remember Tom Carper and Mike Castle would see who bring the biggest turkey over to my office when we had the press conference over there. But I implore everyone who wants to be involved to come to Hurley Heat next Tuesday, November the 26th at 8 o'clock to come volunteer. And if you have any questions, I guess you can call. There's the number. God, you guys are fair. It's got the number. Southwide Fair, you everywhere, man. 302, everybody say 302-655-8250. I don't have to say it.
Right. And before we leave our people, what else would you like to share with them? Anything could be advice as an entrepreneur or just words of encouragement during holidays?
I just want to, again, thank the volunteers. Again, like even with the classic or whatever, and I think that sometimes we get a lot of credit, right? Mm-hmm. Which is probably deservedly so, because somebody has to lead and somebody has to follow. But it's really the volunteers and the people who made all those things happen for me in my life, especially my family. It's nothing like my family.
And also, could you just share with our viewers, what is it or what do you need in order to be the change in our community? Because as you said and we've seen throughout this interview,
what do you need? Change. I think you gotta be committed and be sincere. If you don't believe it, don't do it. Mm. I think that too many times we have people do stuff that don't want to do it, and they get skewed. Why do it? Don't do it.
That's right. Thank you so much, Norman.
Thank you. Booyah!
And congratulations on your much success that you've had throughout your life. And on behalf of all of us here at WITN 22, I'd like to take this opportunity to say thank you so much for watching this episode of In Focus. I've been your host, Yesenia Taveras.